Psalm 6, verse 8, and this is verse 9 in the Greek ordering. We finally arrived at the turning point in this psalm of lament, where we're going to move from all the sadness and grief and petitioning God to rescue him from all the suffering that the psalmist is in, to now the response of the Lord and what he's going to do. So let's read. Aposteta ap emu, pantes hoi ergazamenoi tein anomian, hati, eis ekusin kyrios, tes phones tu klauthmu mu. Well, let's begin with this first verb here, aposteta, which is from aphistemi. It's a me verb. You see a te ending, slight spelling change, but that's normal for these athematic verbs. This is a second plural, aorist active imperative. So the psalmist here is now turning towards y'all, that is the people who are causing his problems, saying, get away. So aphistemi means depart or turn back. So depart from me, ap emu. And then he defines the people he's talking about. So we start with pantes, so that's all. And then we have hoi ergazamenoi. So notice you have a nominative plural masculine, it's third declension with pantes there, and a nominative plural masculine ending here. This is a present active participle from ergazomai, so this would be the workers, or those who work, or all who work. Tein anomian. You can probably tell that there's a namas here. It's an alpha on the front end, so this is lawlessness or wickedness or something like that. So get away from me, everyone who does wickedness. And then we have the important hati here, because now we're going to have a movement from lament to really confidence, if you will. Eis ekusin is from eis akuo, and you see the sin ending. The lengthening happens after the prepositional prefix, of course, with compound verbs. So this is a third singular aorist active indicative. You see akuo there. Eis just means listen to. And so because the kyrios, the Lord, has listened to, that's the great response. God has heard this prayer of lament. But more specifically, tes phones. Often these akuo words will take a genitive as opposed to accusative. So this is the sound, and it's of the weeping. Klauthmos there means weeping, and it's my weeping. So the Lord has heard or listened to the sound of my weeping. And that's why the psalmist can move from lament to confidence. Now, this initial phrase might sound familiar. It shows up in a slightly modified form in Luke 13, 26 through 27, and the parallel here in Matthew 7, 22 through 23. Here, Jesus is talking about how in the end times, in that day, people will come up to him and say, we ate and drank in your presence, or we served the poor, we fed the hungry in your name. That's in the Matthew form. And you taught in our streets. But he, that is the Son of Man, so he's referring to himself here, but he calls himself the Son of Man, on this future day of judgment, will respond, I tell you, I do not know where you come from, which is a way of expressing, I don't know who you are, where you're from, I don't identify with you, you're not of me, you're not of my flock, if you will. And then he says, depart from me, all you workers of evil. And so you'll notice in the Lucan form, it's a slightly different verb in the Matthew form. You see the aposteta here. You have the ap emu. You have pantes. That checks out. You have adikias, which is a good synonym for anomia. And so you can see the dikai word underneath the hood, which means righteousness or justice. And it's, once again, it's negated with that alpha on the front end. So it's the same basic idea. Anomia and adikia are really similar. So this would be injustice. But I would point out that here in the Lucan form, instead of using this participle, those who are working this wickedness, he just uses the noun form ergatai. And so they're the same basic idea. So the wording is quite close. And so what's interesting about this is that Jesus is once again, and we saw this in a few videos previously from John 12, he is taking the words of the psalmist on his lips. He is expressing not only the lament, which we saw previously when he was greatly troubled, but also he's preparing for the vindication. He knows that on this final day of judgment, even those who maybe pretend like they've done good things in the name of Jesus, but they're not actually from him, they're not actually of the faith, he says, depart from me. You've had your chance on this final day of judgment. God will be vindicated because he's heard my prayer, and we know based on this psalm that God will listen to his son's outcry. And so even though this happens about midway through Luke's gospel, you can imagine how this is really pointing towards the cross, where he'll be surrounded by these evildoers and he'll pray a different psalm. He's going to pray Psalm 22 in that particular moment. But it's the same basic idea where he's identifying with the suffering psalmist. But even in that moment, he's taking comfort in the fact that his Father will listen. He has not fully abandoned him, but he will listen and respond through vindicating Jesus on the other side with his resurrection from the grave. So a lot of interesting stuff here in Psalm 6:8.